Hey guys, tonight we drift down a river that births nations and buries villages. You sit cross-legged on the bank of the Nile, your fingertips skimming the cool, silty water. In the distance, the horizon flickers with the heat of the coming day, and reeds sway like whispering priests. You're not on vacation. You're an Egyptian peasant, and the water before you is both your pantry and your executioner. By morning, this gentle ripple might swell into a ravenous beast. The Nile giveth, and the Nile definitely taketh away. Some years, it blesses the land with a thick coat of black silt that lets your barley and onions flourish. Other years, it just forgets to show up. Or worse, it shows up like a drunk uncle at a wedding, smashing your crops and dragging your goats downstream. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Are we talking midnight in Manchester or 4 a.m. in Manila? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You crouch low in your field, ankle deep in post-flood mud, flinging seeds into the thick earth as fast as your blistered fingers allow. The river has just receded, leaving behind rich, black soil. This is the season of hope, or maybe anxiety, depending on how much seed you can spare. You look up and see your neighbor doing the same, and you wonder if either of you will actually have grain left by the end of the year. Not because of the flood, because of the taxmen. Historians still argue whether the ancient Nile's flood levels were systematically recorded in early dynastic periods. But what's not in doubt is your daily fear of famine. You pray to Happy, god of the Nile's flooding, hoping he's in a generous mood this year. His statue, a pot-bellied, blue-skinned figure with vegetation sprouting from his head, is oddly calming, like a cheerful garden gnome who decides the fate of your crops. But let's say this year's inundation is just right. You sow the seeds. You wait. The sun scalds the back of your neck, and mosquitoes mistake your ankles for an open buffet. Finally, sprouts. Green, fragile, lovely. And then, you guessed it, blight. Or rats. Or a sneaky heat wave that bakes the young shoots into crunchy failure snacks. You curse. Quietly. The gods are always listening. Once, generations ago, there was a year when the flood didn't come at all. Old folks still whisper about it. Crops withered, and some say desperate parents ate grass and bark. One legend says King Narmer himself sacrificed a virgin to coax the river back into motion. Didn't work, but the gesture? Classic management strategy. Do something dramatic and blame the gods. You wouldn't know all this, of course. You're too busy trying not to step on a sharp bit of pottery while fetching water from the riverbank. A crocodile slides silently into the water about 20 feet away. You pretend you didn't see it. You'll tell your sister later. She'll pretend she didn't see the one that took your neighbor's pig last week. The Nile isn't just a river. It's a schedule. Every summer it floods. By autumn you plant. In spring, you harvest and pay taxes. In between, you avoid starvation, disease, and the occasional hippopotamus. Those murder potatoes are no joke. Your village sits just high enough on a rise to avoid the worst of the floodwaters. But last year they reached your cousin's doorstep. You helped him rebuild. His house is now slightly less crooked than before. Progress. In your dreams, you think of the Nile as a massive, slow-moving god, one who doesn't really notice the mortals scurrying along its banks. But sometimes you think it does notice, and it's not impressed. You've heard stories of noblemen with fields so big they have to use donkeys to haul their harvest. You don't even have a donkey. You are the donkey. Your harvest, if lucky, will fill 3 baskets. One goes to the temple, one to the scribes, and one to your family. If the flood was generous, maybe there's a 4th. You'll trade it for onions, or sandals, or a real mat instead of straw for your grandmother to sleep on. And through it all, the Nile just keeps flowing, like it always has, like it always will. Sometimes bringing fish, sometimes bringing fever, sometimes bringing the bloated body of fishermen from the next village who forgot that the river bites back. You sit on the bank again at dusk, knees pulled to your chest, watching the water turn gold. Someone sings a lullaby in the distance. A frog croaks. You dip your toes in the water and wonder, not for the first time, if the Nile knows you, if it remembers the dead, if it's listening. Because tomorrow, it might rise again, or it might not. And either way, you still have to get up before dawn and pray it doesn't decide you're next. The Nile has behaved itself this year. Miracle of miracles. So you make it through harvest without a funeral in the family. Now it's time to go home. And by home, of course, we mean a rectangular oven made of sun-dried mud that smells vaguely of smoke, sweat, and last week's lentils. You duck through the low doorway, brushing aside the reed curtain, and step into the two-room universe you share with 5 other people and a chicken who refuses to leave. Your sleeping mat is a thin pile of straw laid over packed earth. It crackles every time you move, and let's be honest, it's more mildly prickly dirt than actual bedding. In the summer, it's like sleeping inside a bread oven. In winter, just swap the oven for a slightly damp clay fridge. Your only pillow is your elbow. If you're lucky, someone left the family water jar full and no neighbor's kid has dipped a filthy hand in it yet. Still, it's your home. You've swept the dirt floor. You've arranged the few possessions you own, 1 cracked bowl, a bronze fishhook, and a woven reed box that holds everything from flint shards to goat teeth. No, you're not exactly an interior designer, but the place has charm, or at least it has walls. And walls are good when the wind carries sand from the desert like a bad attitude. Your mother is boiling something in the corner hearth, a thin stew that smells mostly like onions and ambition. Your younger brother is scratching hieroglyphs into a potsherd, trying to copy what the village scribe wrote last week. Your sister is chasing the chicken again. It's a normal evening. Historians still debate the exact social status of most rural Egyptians. Were you free peasants or something closer to tenant serfs? You don't care. You still have to meet your grain quota or lose your land. And technically, the land belongs to Pharaoh, which means you're living in a glorified rental from a guy who thinks he's the son of a falcon. You help your father patch the roof before the rainy season hits. He climbs up with a bundle of reeds tied together with palm fiber, and you pass him the mud daub. You don't talk much, not because of any family rift, but because opening your mouth means inhaling 5 cubic inches of dust. One good gust, and it's nose full of sand for a week. Once the roof's patched, you tend to fire, not for warmth, but to drive off flies. They're already swarming the fish you hung to dry on the wall, and you're beginning to suspect one of them is out for revenge. Flies, fleas, mosquitoes, your constant roommates. You're not even surprised anymore when you find a flea the size of a lentil on your blanket. You just sigh and flick it into the cooking pot. Extra protein. At night, your house is lit by a single flickering oil lamp, throwing shadows that make the chicken look like a demon. The air is thick and still, and the scent of burning dung cakes hangs over everything. You roll over, try to get comfortable on the mat, and your spine cracks like a stick. That's normal. You're 20 and feel 60. Still, you're luckier than some. You've seen homes half collapse from last year's flood. Families crammed into one room after the neighbor's roof caved in. One guy down the lane still sleeps with his goats because the granary collapsed, and now they're technically in his bedroom. You head outside to relieve yourself behind the date palms. Careful not to step on a scorpion. Your toilet is just a well-worn patch of dirt, and if the wind's right, the neighbors will know what you had for dinner. Sanitation is aspirational, but at least you're not downstream from the tanner's hut. Now that guy is basically a human stink cloud. You look up at the sky. It's breathtaking. The stars blaze over the desert in crisp, silent splendor. You see Orion, well, the Egyptian version of Orion. To you, he's Sa, the soul of Osiris, walking the sky road to the afterlife. It's oddly comforting. Maybe you're not rich, but you're part of the same world as kings and gods. You all sleep under the same stars. Granted, they sleep on feather beds. You sleep next to a snoring cousin who kicks. Back inside, your brother has finally fallen asleep, curled around a clay doll with one arm missing. Your mother is singing softly to herself, weaving palm fronds by the firelight. Your father snores like a clogged water pipe. The chicken has given up on escape and perched herself right on your mother's reed mat. Tomorrow, the cycle begins again. You drift off listening to the creak of the rafters and the distant howl of a desert wind. You dream of better days, maybe a second room, a real bed, a house high enough to avoid the floods. But in truth, even now, you know those dreams are mostly for nobles and priests. Your dreams will stay mudbrick colored, and yet you endure. You laugh, you help. You get up each morning and chase the chicken out of the kitchen. Your house might be small and full of sand, but it's yours. And in ancient Egypt, that's saying something. Morning smacks you awake like a tax collector with a clipboard. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the air already feels thick enough to chew. You roll off your straw mat, careful not to kick your sister, and shuffle outside with a yawn. It's grain tally day, and that means one thing. The scribes are coming. You squint toward the village path. Dust is rising, not from wind, from sandals. Scribes don't walk alone. They travel in packs, like bureaucratic jackalls with linen robes and smug attitudes. You can already hear the clinking of their ink jars and the scratch of reed pens. One carries a little wooden abacus. Another has a scroll. The important one has the look of someone who's never harvested a turnip in his life. You grab your grain baskets, which took months to fill, and line up with the other villagers. A kid down the row throws up from nerves. Nobody reacts. Standard response. The tax scribe examines your baskets, pokes them with a stick, and makes a noise like he's just smelled bad fish. You brought 3 baskets, your entire season's work, and he frowns like you insulted his mother. He dips his pen and starts scribbling. 2 baskets for Pharaoh, 1 for the temple. None for you. Good flood year, he mutters without looking up. Historians still argue whether tax rates were consistent across regions. But one thing's clear, you, the peasant, are never getting the good end of the stick. The granaries take your best grain. The temple gets offerings. You get the leftover barley, the dusty, pebble-filled bits that even the chickens side-eye. You nod, thank the scribe, because not thanking him is dangerous, and lug your now empty baskets back home. You'll make gruel tonight and try to forget that your labor just got fed to the gods in someone's pyramid project. Your neighbor whispers, I hid 1 basket under the goats. Brave or foolish. Last year, an old man tried the same trick. He was caught and forced to dig irrigation ditches until he collapsed. They left him next to a palm tree and used his corpse to scare away crows. At home, your mother looks at your empty baskets and sighs. She breaks off a piece of flatbread and hands it to you. It's mostly air and grit, but it's food. For now. The temple priests swing by later that afternoon, robes fluttering, perfume cloying in the heat. They carry a bronze plate piled with onions and dried fish. Gifts for the gods, they say, but you suspect they'll snack on it later behind the altar. One of them sees your grandmother's amulet, an old, chipped thing carved like a frog. He offers to donate it to the temple. You decline as politely as possible. That frog's protected your family through floods, famine, and one very rude cobra. Religion, in theory, is comforting. In practice, it's also an expense. You're expected to bring offerings, honey, beer, incense, every time someone sneezes or dreams about crocodiles. There's a fee for funerals, another for birth blessings. Your aunt went broke after dedicating a clay cow to Hathor. The cow cracked. Her baby got sick anyway. The gods work in mysterious and budget-draining ways. You remember when your cousin became a temple servant. Everyone was thrilled. Then he came home 6 months later with burned feet and a haunted expression. Apparently, sweeping the sacred court involved standing barefoot on sun-heated stone for 10 hours a day. Holiness, it turns out, blisters. The elite act like grain grows itself. Scribes, priests, nobles, they live off the fat of your fields. Literally. Some of them are so plump they walk like overfed geese. And you're supposed to bow? You're the one with dirt under your nails and cracked heels. You're the one who sweats, prays, and hopes the rat population doesn't explode again this year. And yet, rebellion is unthinkable. The Pharaoh is not just king. He's a god. His face is on every temple wall, every jar, every amulet. Even your cooking pot has a faint engraving of his profile. Some potter's way of saying, Don't burn the stew, or you offend RA. You're hemmed in by devotion and fear. Still, you find small ways to revel. You joke about the scribe's belly. You mutter curses under your breath when the priest demands more incense. You give the smallest offerings you can without getting cursed. One time, your sister hid a spoiled onion in the temple basket. You all laugh for days. Quietly, of course. One fringe belief you secretly like is that the god Set, usually feared as the Lord of Chaos, sometimes takes pity on overworked peasants. He gets it, your father says, half serious. He was always the black sheep. As evening falls, you gather near the granary where old men tell stories. One tale says that during a great famine, a farmer tied stones to his legs and marched into the Nile rather than hand over his last basket. The gods turned him into a lotus flower out of pity. You're not sure you believe it, but the story helps the gruel go down easier. Your sister traces little grain glyphs in the dirt with a stick. She wants to be a scribe someday. You don't discourage her. Maybe she'll be the one with soft sandals and ink-stained hands. Maybe she won't have to wake up dreading the sound of footsteps on the path. As the stars return, you listen to the wind in the reeds. It sounds like laughter, or maybe a warning. Taxes are paid. Your belly isn't full, but it isn't empty. You've survived another cycle. And in ancient Egypt, survival is the only form of protest that sticks. You hear the drumbeat before you see the dust. That thudding, steady rhythm means one thing. The king wants more land, more tribute. And guess what? You're part of the plan. You're not a soldier. You're a farmer, a herder, a grain taxpayer with a bad knee and sandals that disintegrate if you look at them wrong. But Pharaoh doesn't care. The decree has arrived. Every able-bodied man in the region is being summoned. For what? A campaign of glory, of course, which means war. You pack what little you can, a water skin that leaks, a sliver of dried fish, and your father's old dagger. You leave your family behind, your mother silently weeping, your sister shoving a good luck charm into your palm, your brother trying to look brave, but failing. You're not sure if you'll return. No one says it, but everyone knows. The officers march you out with 50 others, all roped together in pairs like particularly sad oxen. It's hot. It's always hot. You're herded into a tent that smells like onions and feet. They hand you a spear. It's cracked. They hand you a shield. It's smaller than your lunch tray. You're told to train. Your training consists of watching an older soldier stab a dummy made of bundled reeds and then saying, "Now you try." Historians still argue whether the conscript army was well organized or barely coherent. Based on your first day, you're leaning toward desperate improvisation. The officers yell a lot. You march in circles. At one point, your entire unit gets lost trying to find the latrine. The next morning, you're on the move, off to fight whoever's annoying Pharaoh this time. Maybe it's some Canaanite city-state. Maybe it's the Nubians again. No one tells you. You just walk. Days turn to weeks. Your sandals fall apart. Your feet blister and then bleed. You march through desert sun, sleep on hard ground, swat flies the size of locusts, and drink brackish water from muddy wells. One man collapses from heat stroke. The medic says, "Pour sand on him." Keep walking. Classic ancient medicine. At night, you lie under the stars, arms crossed over your chest like a mummy in waiting. You dream of your bed, your straw-filled, flea-ridden, creaky mat. You'd sell your last coin to sleep in it again. Then battle. You hear it before you see it. Screams, horns, the thunder of chariots. You grip your cracked spear like it might become a real weapon if you believe hard enough. You advance with your unit, shoulder to shoulder with people you barely know but now trust with your life. The enemy appears, bright shields, wild eyes, terrifying horses. And suddenly it's real. You're in the middle of a dust storm of limbs and shouts. Your spear hits something, maybe someone. A man crashes into you, both of you falling. You can't tell whose blood is on your arm. Yours? Theirs? Does it matter? Later, when it's over, whatever over means, you sit trembling on the ground. You've survived. You think. You still have 2 arms, 2 legs. But something inside you feels cracked. The officers call it a great victory. They parade through camp with plunder, bronze weapons, gold trinkets, a basket of severed hands. Yes, hands. It's how they count the dead. Want credit for a kill? Bring a hand. Some soldiers, they say, cut them off the living to be sure of their tally. You don't ask questions. You don't want answers. One scroll found centuries later described this exact practice. It listed 1,692 hands collected from a single campaign. That's a lot of accounting, and a lot of horror. The wounded are dumped in a tent, moaning, begging. There's no painkiller, just a leather strap to bite and a priest muttering protective spells while someone saws off an arrowhead with a copper blade. You help hold down a man whose leg has turned black. He bites your arm so hard it bleeds. Later, he dies anyway. That night, you wash your hands in the river. The water runs red. You try not to think about it. After the battle, you march again. Another village to raid. Another town to pacify. You see smoke in the distance and hope it's not yours. Somewhere along the way, your friend Nephra dies of dysentery. You dig a shallow grave with your hands and mark it with a stone. It's all you can do. He didn't even get to swing his spear. When the campaign ends, you return. Well, some of you. Maybe half. The rest are buried under foreign stars. You limp home thinner, dirtier, and haunted. Your family welcomes you like a ghost. They weren't sure you'd make it. Neither were you. Your sister asks what the war was like. You say dusty. You don't mention the hands. Historians debate whether Egyptian campaigns brought long-term stability. Maybe, but you're not thinking about geopolitics. You're thinking about Nephra, about the guy whose blood got on your sandals, about how your spear still smells like iron. You tuck it behind the door. You hope you'll never have to use it again. But deep down, next year when Pharaoh wants more glory, more gold, more tribute, he'll send for you again. And you'll go, because you're expendable, but not optional. Your back still aches from the last military campaign. But there's no time to rest. Not when Pharaoh has decided that his eternal soul needs yet another monument. This time, it's not a temple, not a stela, not even one of those fancy obelisks. Nope, it's a pyramid, a massive one. And guess who's just been honored with a spot on the work crew? You arrive at the construction site near Giza, where the desert heat bounces off white limestone like it's trying to set your bones on fire. A foreman shouts over the wind, pointing at blocks the size of livestock. That goes there, he says, as if that clears up the mystery of how a 2-ton rock will magically levitate into place. You and 24 other conscripts get to work, slowly, gruntingly, sweating in unison like a very confused choir. Your job? Hauling stones up a long, winding ramp, with ropes made of papyrus, wearing sandals that laugh at friction. The foreman says pull, and you pull. The block moves an inch. Maybe. Your hands blister, your shoulder stings, and someone vomits from heat before mid-morning. Historians still argue over how these great monuments were built. Sleds, levers, counterweights, alien intervention. Okay, maybe not the serious scholars, but you know how it's built. One scream-inducing tug at a time. The labor is relentless. Sunrise to sunset, 6 days a week. The 7th day, you don't get off. You just get moved to mud hauling or grain rationing. Breaks are rare. Conversations rarer. You stop talking, start grunting. Your new language is pain. The workers' village, if it can be called that, is a sprawl of mudbrick bunkhouses near the base of the construction ramp. You share a room with 7 others. You all snore like injured oxen and argue over who smells the worst. Spoiler, it's everyone. Still, there's some humanity here. Communal kitchens serve barley bread and sour beer. There's a makeshift healer who rubs crushed garlic and honey into your bruises. One guy has carved a game board into the wall, and you all play when your fingers aren't too swollen to move pieces. You meet a woman named Met. She's tough as brick and twice as unyielding. She carries water jars up the ramp day after day to keep the crew hydrated. She laughs at your sunburn and hands you a linen scrap to cover your neck. You fall a little in love. Or maybe that's just a heat stroke talking. You also meet a man named Ipu. He used to be a fisherman. Now he's assigned to stone cutting. He tells you, fish don't fight back. These rocks, they win every day. One afternoon, a worker is crushed when a block slips. It happens fast, A scream, a crunch, silence. Everyone stops. A foreman makes the sign of protection and calls for a replacement. The body is wrapped in linen and carried away. The work resumes. No one speaks of it again. You dream that night of being flattened, like a bug under a sandal. You wake with a jolt, and Med hands you water. You're not crushed, she says. Yet, the days blur. You lose track of time. Your muscles harden. Your humor curdles. The pyramid rises behind you like some terrible stone mountain that gets taller every time you blink. Once, a priest comes by to bless the stones. He waves incense and mutters spells. Then he trips over a rope and lands face first in a pile of gravel. The entire crew erupts in laughter. 4 or 5 glorious seconds. Your ribs hurt from joy instead of labor. Then the foreman yells, and it's back to misery. There's a moment, brief, strange, when you crest the ramp and see the view from near the pyramid's edge. The desert stretches endlessly. The Nile glitters far below. For one breath, you feel like a god. Then the rope burns your hand, and you almost lose control of the sled. Back to reality. Sometimes you carve your name into the limestone blocks, not your real name. Just a symbol only you will recognize. A small rebellion. A whisper of identity buried in Pharaoh's legacy. You hear whispers of workers who escape, trying to return to their villages. Most are caught. One was found dead in the desert with a broken leg and a palm branch still clutched in his hand. You wonder if he made it farther than most. You also hear whispers that some of the volunteers aren't volunteers at all. Prisoners of war, debtors, troublemakers. Slaves. Their skin is thinner, their eyes wary. They don't speak unless spoken to. You give one your water ration once. He nods. That's it. It's enough. Even so, there's a strange pride that creeps in. Not for Pharaoh, certainly not, but in surviving, in being part of something massive, something that might outlive every pain in your joints. Maybe in 5,000 years, someone will look at this pyramid and wonder, how did they build it? You want to leave behind a tiny voice. We did. And it almost broke us. You get a day off after someone important dies. Met braids her hair. Ipu carves a new game board. You sleep without dreaming. Just once. Tomorrow, the block will still be waiting. And so will you. You return home to a dusty breeze, a familiar goat chewing your front reed curtain, and silence. Too much silence. Inside the house, your mother is bent over your youngest brother, wiping his forehead with a wet cloth. His eyes flutter like moth wings barely open. His skin is the color of sand. Your sister doesn't look up from grinding barley. She just says, "He's the third this year." You kneel beside him. He's burning up, breathing in short gasps. You recognize the signs. Every Egyptian does. It starts with a fever, then the belly swells. And then you dig another hole. Historians still argue over the primary causes of childhood mortality in ancient Egypt. Some say contaminated water was the worst offender. Others blame parasites. You blame the gods. Quietly, at night. Your neighbor's infant died just 2 days ago. Before that, your cousin lost her toddler to a scorpion sting. There's no real system of medicine. Only prayer, garlic, honey, and hope. Sometimes the temple healers come, but only if you donate grain or a goose. You don't have either. You do have a clay amulet shaped like a lioness. It's cracked. It'll have to do. Child mortality is a constant drumbeat in your life. Families have 5, 6, even 10 children. Not because they want a football team, but because odds are half won't see age 5. You remember your own siblings who didn't make it. One choked on a date seed. Another just stopped breathing one night. No one talks about them. There's no time for mourning when survival is still on the day's agenda. Your sister pours water into your brother's mouth. He coughs. That's a good sign. You hope. Then again, you hope last time too. At night, you hear your mother whispering prayers to Tarit, the hippo goddess of childbirth. Her voice shakes. Tarit has a shrine made of reeds in the corner, more a gesture than a temple. She's painted with thick thighs, sharp teeth, and the expression of someone who dares you to cross her. She protects children. Sometimes, when she's in the mood, you light an oil lamp and place it beside your brother. The smoke curls upward like a question. Meanwhile, Your older cousin's daughter just turned 12. She's betrothed now, to a man with 5 goats and a widower's smile. She sits quietly, braiding her hair, eyes empty. Childhood ends fast here, if you're lucky enough to have one at all. And then there's the midwife. A brisk, no-nonsense woman with hands like carved wood and a voice like cracked gravel. She checks your brother's tongue, feels his forehead, mutters about bad air and sour spirits. She mixes a poultice of honey, garlic, and mashed onions, then smears it on his belly. You hold your breath, not from suspense, from the smell. She tells your mother to burn frankincense and scatter salt around the room. Then she leaves. No fee, just a nod. She knows you're already paying in fear. The next morning, your brother opens his eyes. Just for a second, he mumbles something about stars. Your mother weeps into her hands. Maybe it's a good omen. Maybe not. You've learned not to hope too loudly. You gotta fetch water. A neighbor is burying a wrapped bundle in the sand. No one asks. No one offers condolences. Just a respectful nod. You all know the rhythm. Birth, fever, silence, sand. Back at home, your brother sleeps. His breathing is shallow, but steady. Your mother hangs a new amulet over the doorway. An eye of Horus carved from green glazed faience. It's supposed to ward off sickness. You squint at it. It feels more like wishful thinking in ceramic form. And yet, you want it to work. Desperately. Historians still debate whether amulets truly had practical use or were merely symbolic. You'd say symbolism is all you have. That and warm water, if the jar hasn't gone foul. Your sister tells a joke to your brother. Something about a donkey falling in love with a goose. He doesn't laugh, but he smiles. It's enough. You cling to that smile like it's a rope pulling you out of a deep, dark well. Night falls again. Your family gathers around the hearth. The room smells of smoke, sweat, and healing. You share a dinner of lentil mush and wild figs. No one says it, but everyone knows it could be the last meal together. That's the curse of parenthood in this world. You love them while bracing for goodbye. You curl up on your mat beside your brother. His breath is quieter now, but still there. The amulet glints faintly in the firelight. You close your eyes. If he wakes tomorrow, you'll praise Tarit, offer a prayer, and pretend like the fear is gone. If he doesn't, well, the river's not far. The graveyard has space. You don't sleep. Not really. You just wait. The Nile is quieter than usual this morning. Still, heavy like it knows what's coming. You walk alongside its bank with a reed basket on your back, hoping to catch fish or frogs. Or, if you're truly desperate, river snails. It's peaceful, almost tranquil, until you spot something glide just beneath the surface. A flash of scales, then nothing. Your spine tightens. You know that shape. A crocodile. You freeze, then slowly back away from the water. Behind you, your little cousin is tossing pebbles at a frog like it's a personal enemy. You hiss his name and yank him back. He groans. You remind him, quietly but firmly, what happened to the last kid who wandered too close. That story travels fast. How the beast leapt from the reeds, jaws like a temple gate, and dragged the poor boy into the shallows before anyone could scream. Only his sandals floated back. One of them ended up as a shrine offering. Still has teeth marks. Historians agree the Nile crocodile was one of the most feared predators in ancient Egypt, and not without reason. But what they don't include in the textbooks is the psychological damage of living next to a river that occasionally eats your friends. You head farther upstream, avoiding the shallows. But the crocodiles aren't the only hazards. You see hippo tracks near the mud, big, round, cartoonishly innocent looking. Don't be fooled. Hippos are death with stubby legs and bad tempers. They'll flip your fishing boat, crush your ribs, and snort while doing it. Your uncle once tried to chase one away from his melon patch. They buried him with a broken leg and a perfect melon rind still clutched in his hand. Even the birds here are psychotic. A goose once chased you through an entire field, wings flapping like angry scrolls, hissing like a teapot from the underworld. Everyone laughed. You still have emotional scars. And let's not forget snakes. Cobras love to sun themselves near grain stores and latrines. You saw one last week curled up inside a clay pot like it was home. Your mother threw the whole pot into the river, snake included. No regrets. You return to the village with your basket only half full. Some fish bones, a few slimy eels, and one frog your cousin swears can sing. You're just glad to be alive. You pass the shrine of Sobuk, the crocodile god. His statue is carved with reverence and a touch of fear. Some villagers make offerings to him. Fish, beer, even incense. One time, someone left a carved wooden arm. The priest said it was symbolic. You're not convinced. That night, the elders gather and share animal tales, each one more horrifying than the last. The tale of the hippo that flattened 2 boats in one strike. The snake that slithered into a sleeping man's ear. The goose that stole a baby's bread and refused to give it back. It would be funny if it weren't mostly true. Nature is sacred, your grandmother says. It's also rude. She has a point. Even domesticated animals cause problems. Cows can kick. Donkeys bite. Cats? The temples say they're sacred, and sure, they look nice when they're not knocking over every clay jar in your home. Your aunt's cat once dragged a mouse into the family bread oven and set off a chain of events that ended in burnt dinner and an accidental fire offering to Batet. Historians still debate whether early Egyptians domesticated animals out of love or necessity. You're pretty sure it's both, and also, no choice. You need the milk, the eggs, the wool. So you endure the bites, the scratches, the pecking rage of poultry on a mission. You're washing up near the well when something rustles in the bushes. Everyone freezes. A kid screams, "Crocodile!" and chaos erupts. People trip over baskets, kids leap into trees. One man faints directly into a pile of wet laundry. Turns out, it's just a giant lizard. But still, the panic is real. No one laughs until hours later. You realize that danger isn't always big or fast or loud. Sometimes it's slow, lurking, wrapped in scales or feathers or fur. And you learn, day by day, to walk carefully, to listen for reeds rustling in the wrong rhythm, to smell the air before you drink the water. The Nile may feed you, but it never lets you forget who's in charge. That night, you sleep with one eye half open and a stick by your mat, just in case. You wake up with a throat like gravel and a nose full of glue. Your bones ache. Your joints squeak. You're either dying or, worse, about to meet the local apothecary. You shuffle outside and nearly collapse into a goat. Your mother peers at you from the shade, squints, then sends your cousin to fetch Senate, the village healer, or as you like to call her, the queen of questionable remedies. Senate arrives with her usual satchel of wonder and worry. It smells like garlic, vinegar, dried fish, and maybe some regret. She presses a calloused hand to your forehead, pokes your ribs, and mutters something about dry wind in the lungs and spirits nesting in the throat. You groan. She grins. The first treatment, a garlic and honey paste smeared on your chest. It's thick, it's hot, and it attracts at least one very curious fly. The second, leeches. Yes, leeches. She places 2 fat ones behind your ears and assures you they're highly educated. Historians confirm the ancient Egyptian medical world was surprisingly advanced for its time. Medical papyri detail hundreds of remedies using plants, minerals, and animal parts. Of course, some of those remedies involve crocodile dung and crushed beetles. So, progress with a side of horror. Senate flips open a little scroll and chants something under her breath. She calls a healing spell. It sounds suspiciously like gossip about her neighbor's stolen duck. But who are you to argue with a woman who once cured a toothache with burnt lettuce? She grinds black seeds, spits into the mix, and rubs it on your temples. It stings. You yelp. She says that means it's working. Later, she brews tea from fermented figs and moldy barley. Drink this, she says, handing you a steaming cup that smells like wet sandals. You hesitate. She glares. You drink. It tastes like betrayal. Your fever breaks by nightfall. You're not sure if it's the herbs, the leeches, or just the fact that your body decided it wanted to survive out of spite. But you do feel better. Ish. You lie by the hearth as Senate prepares one final step, a protection charm. It's a tiny clay tablet etched with the image of Bes, the dwarf god of health and mischief. She ties it to your wrist with a frayed bit of string. Keep it dry, she warns. He doesn't like bath time. You nod solemnly. You don't understand how or why it works, but at this point, you'll take any help you can get, even from a clay god with a beard and a wild dance move. Historians still argue over whether Bess was taken seriously or treated as comic relief. In your experience, both. You've seen mothers threaten toddlers with his name and temple dancers giggle during festivals in his honor. He's strange. He's beloved. He's probably watching you sneeze right now. You sleep deeply that night. Your dreams are weird. You're chasing a frog made of honey through a maze of papyrus scrolls, while Bess plays the lute in a corner. You wake with a start and a clearer head. By midday, you're up again, wobbly but upright. Your family cheers. Your grandmother says Bess must have tickled the sickness right out of you. You thank Senate with a small pouch of dates and a handful of lentils. She sniffs them, nods, and vanishes like a desert breeze. You'll probably see her again in a week when someone else gets a scorpion sting or sneezes too enthusiastically. But for now, you're back. Alive, upright, and vaguely sticky from garlic paste. You scrape yourself off the mat and limp toward the river to wash. Halfway there, you realize you still smell like a spice rack fell into a compost pit. The villagers give you space. You appreciate that. At the river, you clean up, then sit on a warm rock, letting the sun bake some of the healing herbs off your skin. You watch a heron stalk a fish, feel the breeze in your still tender chest, and try to remember what not being sick felt like. You don't feel strong yet, but you do feel there. And sometimes, in ancient Egypt, that's enough. You don't feel sick anymore, but something's still off. Your appetite returns. Your limbs move. You can chase the goat out of the vegetable patch again. But a strange heaviness clings to you. Not in the body, but in the space just behind your ribs. You've seen this before, especially in older folks. They start moving slower, laughing less, talking about dreams filled with dust. That's when you remember what comes next. Death prep. No, you're not dying. Yet. But in Egypt, you spend your whole life preparing for your grand finale. Death isn't the end. It's a cosmic job interview. And you're barely qualified to be an intern in the afterlife. It starts small. You get measured for your funeral linen. Just enough to wrap the essentials. You watch your grandmother argue with a linen seller over thread count. And somehow, it's the funniest thing you've seen all week. Next comes the checklist. Have you been kind? Have you stolen bread? Have you cheated your neighbor? Have you spoken ill of the gods? You think hard about that one. Quietly. Historians often praise the Egyptian afterlife as hopeful, an eternity of farming in perfect fields with no scorpions and plenty of beer. But what they skip over is the bureaucracy. You have to pass a judgment, and not just any judgment, the weighing of the heart. The heart, seat of your thoughts and morality, will be placed on a golden scale and weighed against the feather of Maat, goddess of truth. If it balances, congratulations, welcome to eternity. If it sinks, your soul gets eaten by a crocodile-lion-hippo hybrid named Amit. Very final, very crunchy. You've seen the papyrus scrolls. A jackal-headed Anubis adjusting the scale. Thoth, the ibis god, taking notes. Osiris watching with that spooky calm that only death gods seem to pull off. Meanwhile, your soul sweats quietly and hopes you didn't kick that goat too hard last week. So you begin collecting. Not riches, you're a peasant, remember, but charms, spells, little things that might help. A scrap of a prayer to Osiris. A crude shabby figurine carved from bone. A heart scarab your aunt gave you. It's chipped, but might still work. Then there's the Book of the Dead. Not a real book. More like a patchwork of spells and rituals painted on papyrus. You don't have your own copy, but you've memorized pieces from temple readings. I have not robbed. I have not slain the sacred cattle. I have not made others weep. You repeat them sometimes before bed, like a mantra or a bribe. Your cousin says he plans to cheat the test. He's buried a fake heart next to his real one, just in case. The priest called it blasphemy. Your cousin called it a backup plan. Honestly, you respect the hustle. Then you attend a funeral. It's a neighbor, old Horam, the basket weaver. His sons wrap him in linen, paint his eyelids green with malachite, and place a wooden mask over his face. He looks serene, sort of, except for the fact that his cat keeps trying to nap on the corpse. The procession is somber. People wail, flutes screech, women toss dust in their hair. You do your part, crying respectfully and trying not to trip over the offering table. The priest chants prayers and pours milk into the sand. Someone accidentally drinks the offering beer. No one corrects him. At the tomb site, they place Horem's body into a simple clay coffin, surround him with shabby figures, dried food, and a loaf of honey bread. It's modest but dignified. You wonder what they'll bury with you. A fishing hook? That game piece you carved into a frog? Maybe just the smell of garlic from all those pastes. Later that night, your grandmother hands you a beetle carved from greenstone. It's not much, she says, but it might tell the gods you tried. You sleep with it under your mat. Historians still debate whether the common folk believed in full-scale mummification or simply practiced partial rituals. What's certain is, you do what you can. Maybe you won't get a gold sarcophagus, but maybe you'll get a chance to plead your case to Anubis, eye to eye, jackal to peasant. And maybe he'll listen. Maybe he'll laugh. Maybe he'll look at your chipped amulet and say, "You really gave it a shot." And in that moment, you won't think of pyramids or battles or grain tax. You'll think of warm river water, of your sister laughing, of garlic and goats and one good, dreamless nap. You'll hope that's enough. It's dark when you hear the shouting. At first you think it's another drunken fisherman arguing with the goat again. But no, it's urgent, sharp, real. You throw on a robe, grab a clay lamp, and run toward the commotion. You find your neighbor at the edge of the village, red-faced, gesturing wildly at a patch of torn earth. His family tomb's been broken into. The lid of the sarcophagus sits askew, the funerary jars tipped over, precious amulets gone. Only the bones remain, scattered like old tools. You all stand there in silence, because no one says the word, but everyone's thinking it. Grave robbery. The crime is older than the tombs themselves. In a land where gold is buried and poverty is widespread, temptation is practically mummified into the architecture. Some say even the workers who built the royal pyramids knew how to sneak back in. Not immediately, of course. You wait. You let the desert settle. You remember the twists of the passage. Then one night, quiet feet and a fast hand. Your neighbor swears he saw footprints. Probably that kid from the far village. Someone mutters. Another says it could have been a priest's apprentice. The whispering starts. The accusing. The not-so-subtle glances. Historians still argue how much of ancient Egypt's economy relied on illicit tomb raiding. Some scrolls suggest entire crime networks. Others hint at rogue families scraping together food. You don't know about empires. You know about this man's grief. You help him pick up his father's bones and re-wrap them in the linen, smoothing each edge like it matters. Because it does. The next day, everyone's on edge. You double-check your grandmother's grave mound. Still undisturbed for now. You hang a protective charm over your house door. Your cousin carves the eye of Horus into every visible beam. Your aunt spits 3 times at any stranger who comes near, just in case. But the fear remains, not just of theft, of forgetting. Because robbing a tomb isn't just stealing gold. It's erasing a person's eternity. And yet, you understand the desperation. One stolen amulet could feed a family for months. One gold necklace could buy safety from next year's grain tax. You hear whispers that some people sell grave goods to priests themselves, who then resell them as blessings. Hypocrisy makes a very profitable loop. You're walking near the river when you see a boy, barefoot, dusty, carrying something wrapped in cloth. He flinches when you approach, clutching it close. You don't ask. You don't report him. You just watch as he hurries toward the hills, where the tombs sleep and the sun can't always see. You return home and feel sick in your stomach. Is this who you'll become? Someone who digs up the dead to feed the living? Or someone who just watches? Later that night, your grandfather tells you a story. There was once a grave robber who tried to steal from a priest's tomb, but the priest's ghost followed him home, turned his beer sour, made his wife barren, and cursed his goats with hiccups until the end of time. You laugh, but only a little. There's a clay tablet hanging on your wall. It shows a man kneeling before God, hands raised, heart exposed. Below, it is an inscription. Speak my name, and I live again. That's the real fear, isn't it? That your name will vanish. That your bones will be lost. That no one will remember what you loved or feared or built. So the next morning, you do something bold. You gather the kids and take them to your family plot. You show them each marker, each rock. You tell stories. That's my aunt, who once scared off a crocodile with a sandal. That's my father, who carved a flute from a fig branch and made it sing. They listen. They laugh. They repeat the names. And for a brief, perfect moment, the dead are with you again. Not wrapped in linen or sealed in stone, but alive in memory, glowing behind your eyelids. Maybe that's all the afterlife really is. There's a breeze this morning, the kind that doesn't scald your skin but still carries a bit of sand just to remind you who's boss. You're sweeping your doorstep when a group of men in fine robes strut through the village, trailed by porters and one very tired-looking donkey. The noblemen are in town. Everyone suddenly remembers how to bow. You put down your broom and lower your eyes. One of the officials nods in your direction. You think it might be a kind nod, until you realize he's looking past you, at your goat. The goat bows too, probably coincidental. They're here to inspect the granary. Not because they're worried about your food, but because Pharaoh wants to make sure the temples are stocked before anyone else eats. One of them takes notes on a scroll while sipping something from a golden cup. You've had the same cup for 5 years. It's made of dried gourd. It leaks. Historians still debate the exact structure of ancient Egypt's bureaucracy, but one thing is clear. These guys are everywhere. They document everything. How much barley you grew. How many donkeys you own. How many days you sneezed last month. They might know more about your bowel movements than you do. The chief scribe, a man with eyebrows like angry snakes, inspects your yard. He frowns. You consider apologizing for the cracked pot near your door. He scribbles something. You're probably doomed. Then a priest arrives. His perfume arrives 5 seconds before he does. He's young, smug, and clearly thinks he's Osiris's personal stylist. He's here to collect temple tribute, a voluntary offering of goods and labor, backed by absolutely no pressure except the looming weight of spiritual guilt and social collapse. Your mother offers a basket of dried figs. Your sister brings old linen for bandages. You offer eggs. The priest winces. Duck eggs, you lie. They're chicken eggs. He doesn't notice. Temples, you've learned, are like beautiful parasites. They give blessings, rituals, and holidays, sure, but they also take your grain, your goats, and occasionally your last shred of patience. Later, you walk past the temple and see a ceremony in progress. A long row of priests chant in unison. Incense curls into the sky. They carry an image of the god Ammonius on a golden litter, flanked by dancers and drummers. It's stunning, elaborate, and probably cost the entire fish harvest of 5 villages. You pause, watching the pageantry. The crowd presses in, eyes wide. Your sister gasps when she sees the dancers, dressed in bright linen, spinning like wind in the desert. For a moment, it's beautiful, divine. Then someone drops a jar. It smashes. Everyone flinches. The drummer misses a beat. A priest trips over his own robe. The spell breaks. The crowd laughs nervously. You walk away wondering what the gods think of all this. Later, at home, your uncle grumbles about temple corruption. He swears one of the priests took his best goat last season and renamed it Divine Stew. You choke on your lentils. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian religion was truly spiritual for the common folk or just another extension of state control. You'd say both. You believe, you fear, you obey, but sometimes deep down you question. Quietly, very quietly. You think of Ma'at again, order, truth, balance. The priest says the Pharaoh is her earthly embodiment, but you've seen that embodiment ride past in a golden chariot, while your neighbor buries his child in a reed-wrapped shroud. Balance? Not quite. Still, you light the incense. You say the prayers. You help clean the little village shrine on feast days. Because even if the system is lopsided, the gods still might be listening. You go to bed that night feeling equal parts reverent and exhausted. You dream of standing before Ma'at's feather again, your hands full of duck eggs, trying to explain the priest's perfume. The seasons shift. The air grows heavy, thick with moisture and gnats. It's flood time again. You can smell it before you see it. The Nile swelling, carrying silt, fish, old branches, and occasionally someone's runaway laundry downstream. The black water creeps up the banks like a slow animal reclaiming its space. Your family moves the valuables, such as they are, to the roof. Jars of grain, your sister's reed doll, the household gods. Everyone braces for whatever version of the flood the river feels like delivering this year. Will it kiss the steps or knock on your door? Historians record how Egyptian civilization owed everything to this cycle. The inundation, planting, harvest, taxation. But that's the big picture view. Down here on ground level, it feels like a high-stakes gamble with everything you love on the table. One year, the flood came too low. Crops withered. People starved. That was the year your uncle's friend sold his fishing net for a handful of lentils. Another year, the river rose too high and swept away half the village's goats. You remember chasing after one, barefoot in the mud, while it bleated insults at you in Goatish. This year, it's moderate. Mostly, you lose 2 clay pots, 1 mat, and a perfectly good sandal to the tide. Could be worse. Your neighbor lost his chicken coop. The chickens now roost on his roof and refuse to come down. They've tasted elevation and won't return to the commoner's mud. You spend the days bailing water and shoveling silt. Your arms ache. Your back protests. But when the river retreats, it leaves behind thick, fertile soil, the gift that turns mud into bread. You scrape it into rows, ready for planting. It's gross. It's glorious. You pray to Happy, the Nile god, again. You offer him the weirdly shaped onion your sister found. May your waters bless our field, not flood our beds, your mother says. It's not official scripture, but it's heartfelt. In the evenings, you gather with neighbors on rooftops. You swap stories and share dry dates. Children laugh, splash in puddles, throw mud. One girl shapes a crocodile out of silt and names it after the tax scribe. Everyone applauds. Despite the hardship, this is the closest thing to joy. You see a traveling scribe measuring the water levels from a notched pillar, one of the old Nilometers. He marks a line, squints, mutters to himself, and notes something on a scroll. You wonder how much your taxes will increase based on that scratch in the stone. You smile, then you stop smiling. Historians still debate how accurate these early flood records were. You suspect they were about as precise as your cousin's cooking. Mostly guesswork with enthusiastic seasoning. One day, a strange boat arrives, flat-bottomed, loaded with tools and men you don't recognize. They're here to repair the irrigation ditches. You offer to help. They offer you a broken shovel. You get to work. They pot forward, over and over. Mud in your ears, your sandals, your dignity. During a break, one of the newcomers plays a flute made from bone. The melody is haunting. You hum along, even though you don't know the tune. Music in the mud. It feels ancient. It probably is. Then the biting flies return. Right on cue, you slap one and smear it across your arm. Your cousin calls it Nile war paint. You start a new fashion trend. It's disgusting. It's also strangely empowering. At night, you dream of high water. In your sleep, you wade through chest-deep floods, try to rescue jars and relatives. One turns into the other. You wake up with straw in your hair and a strange desire to build a boat. But eventually, the water recedes. The mud hardens. The sun returns. Life resumes. You dig small canals, plant barley and flax. The fields stretch out in tidy rows. Birds come, pecking at seeds. You yell at them. They ignore you. It's all part of the game. And you realize this is the rhythm of your life. Flood, plant, wait, harvest. A sacred loop older than pyramids. And while Pharaoh builds monuments to immortality, you build dinner. Day by muddy day. And somehow, that matters more. You're not supposed to be awake, but you are. The house is quiet, except for your father's soft snoring and the occasional whimper from a dreaming chicken. But your mind is loud, because tomorrow, you start something new, something terrifying. You've been chosen, for reasons unclear and perhaps suspicious, to apprentice under the village scribe. You don't know whether to be honored or afraid. Scribes are elite, literate, mysterious. They wear better linen, drink actual wine, and walk like the world should make space for their ink-stained toes. They answer only to other scribes, or Pharaoh himself. And they don't usually mingle with goat chasers like you. But here you are, belly full of nerves and lentils, trying to remember the 3 basic shapes of a duck in hieroglyphs. Historians hail scribes as the engine of Egyptian administration. Without them, there'd be no tax records, no legal scrolls, no temple decrees, just chaos and people yelling about donkeys. But for you, it's simpler. If you learn to write, maybe, just maybe, you won't have to haul mud bricks for the rest of your life. At sunrise, you report to the scribe's house. It smells of ink, old papyrus, and quiet judgment. He looks up from a long scroll, squints, and points you to a reed mat. Sit, he says. Don't fidget. Don't sneeze on the ink. Your first task is to grind black pigment from soot and mix it with water in a tiny ceramic dish. You stir too hard. It sloshes. He sighs like someone who just saw a scarab ruin his sandcastle. Then come the practice glyphs. Ducks, eyes, reeds, snakes, arms, baskets. You copy them with a trembling hand. Try not to smear anything. He glances over your shoulder and mutters, "That's not a duck. That's a terrified onion." You improve. Slowly. He gives you scraps of worn papyrus to practice on. You treasure each one like a sacred relic. The first time your line of glyphs looks even vaguely readable, he nods. Once, you beam for a week. Your friends think you're a traitor. Writing? They scoff. Why not join the perfume boys while you're at it? But deep down, they're jealous. You know it. You be too. There are perks. The scribe lets you sit in shade. You don't have to carry anything heavier than a reed pen. You get to listen as elders dictate complaints, priests request transcriptions. And once, you copied a love poem that made your ears turn red. You ask the scribe who writes the spells in the tombs. People like me, he says. Well, people better than you. For now. Sometimes he reads aloud. Mythical tales, gods arguing, animals talking, stars fighting over who shines brighter. You listen with open mouth, brush dangling in one hand. Words feel like magic, more powerful than stone, more lasting than pyramids. Then comes the hard part. You're asked to record grain tallies. Real numbers, real families. The scribe watches you like a hawk. Mistake the decimals, he warns, and someone starves. No pressure. You focus like never before. Your hand cramps. Your eyes blur. But you finish. He checks the scroll. Nods once. You didn't ruin it, he says. That's basically a royal decree of approval. Historians still discuss whether scribes were resented or respected by villagers. You get it now. Both. You're the line between words and power. People squint at you like you've grown a second head. Or wings. Some ask you to read messages. Others ask you to not read their debts aloud. You oblige. Sometimes, you start keeping your own scroll scraps. A diary, kind of observations, sketches, little things, like the way your sister always sings when cooking, or how the moonlight glints off wet clay after a flood. Things that matter to no one but you, and that, somehow, feels sacred. One day, you write your name, not carved into a wall, not scratched in mud, written in ink, in full glyphs, and you stare at it like it's a miracle, because now the gods can read it too. The air smells like crushed mint and camel breath, which can only mean one thing. The caravan is in town. You see the dust cloud before the people. Oxen, donkeys, tall men with desert cloaks. Camels looking offended by existence. Their bells jingle as they pass, like laughter you're not invited to. Everyone in your village drops what they're doing, because a caravan means news, stories, spices, trouble, and occasionally a tiny miracle disguised as a foreign trinket. You run to the square with the rest of the curious crowd. The merchants lay out their wares on woven mats. Jars of cinnamon, carved ivory combs, tiny blue-glazed hippos, incense that smells like rain in a fig orchard. Your little brother gets yelled at for touching a copper mirror. Your cousin tries to haggle for a shell. Badly. Historians describe ancient Egypt as both self-sufficient and cosmopolitan. And it's true. You grow your own barley, but your perfume comes from Punt. Your sandals were probably inspired by Canaanite styles. That lapis bead on your neighbor's ankle, it crossed deserts just to twinkle there. You marvel at the goods. A bead that shimmers like moonlight. A jar of oil that makes your hands smell like royalty. A loaf of bread shaped like a fish. You buy nothing. Of course, you're broke, but you inhale deeply and pretend you can afford wonder. You ask one of the traders where he's from. He says far. He smiles. He won't say more. He knows mystery sells. That evening, the storytellers arrive. They don't sell anything but imagination. One climbs onto a crate and begins, voice rich and curling like smoke. There was once a pharaoh so fat his pyramid had stairs. The children squeal. The elders chuckle. You sit, eyes wide, letting the tale unfold. Gods arguing over soup. A donkey outwitting a lion. A fisherman who caught a mermaid, disguised as a crocodile. You forget your back pain, your sore fingers, your unpaid grain quota. Because for a moment, you're not a farmer, not a scribe, not a peasant. You're just there in the story. Later, you help the caravan set up tents. You earn a figure. It's the juiciest thing you've eaten in a month. One merchant shows you a scroll written in a foreign script, curves and dots, utterly unfamiliar. He points to it and says, "This says, all roads lead to sand." You nod. That feels accurate. He tells you that in his homeland, people ride giant birds. You're skeptical. Then again, you just wrote your name last week. Anything feels possible now. Historians still argue whether these traveling merchants exaggerated their tales. Probably. But when life is hard, exaggeration is its own kind of medicine. You ask if any news has come from thieves. He nods. A new vizier. Some scandal with a donkey. You didn't hear it from me. You try to imagine a court full of people arguing over a donkey. Then you remember your neighbor's goat started a marriage dispute last year. Not so different after all. Before bed, your sister shows you a comb the merchant gave her in exchange for 2 onions and a song. It's carved from bone and has little flowers etched into it. She combs her hair like a queen. You don't tell her it's probably used. Doesn't matter. You fall asleep to the sounds of drums and laughter drifting across the rooftops. Someone sings in a language you don't understand. You hum along anyway, because in a world of floods, taxes, and sand in your teeth, this moment of color, of scent, of impossible stories is what makes it bearable. Tomorrow, they'll leave. The dust cloud will fade. You'll go back to your mat, your shovel, your careful hieroglyphs. But tonight, you dream of far-off lands, gods who play dice, and merchants who carry the stars in jars. The caravan is gone. The square is quiet again. Even the goat seems bored. You return to your usual rhythm. Scribal work in the morning, field labor in the afternoon. Dodging sandstorms of gossip at dusk. Your name is no longer just muttered over barley and taxes. People call on you to read charms, copy poems, help write downland disputes that involve 5 cousins and 1 suspiciously loud duck. But today, things are different. Today, you get news. Pharaoh is dead. The village scribe receives a formal message, carried by 2 soldiers and sealed with wax, so red it looks like blood. He reads it aloud, slow and heavy, as though each word is made of stone. The son of Ra has departed to the west. May he live eternally in the fields of reeds. No one cheers. No one wails. Just silence. Then murmuring. What happens now? Historians remind us how orderly the succession of pharaohs was. Rituals, coronations, cosmic alignment. But from where you're standing, it feels more like throwing a pot with one eye closed. The court is far away, but the ripples reach even your little village. Taxes might change. New temple edicts will be issued. A fresh round of volunteer labor drafts is likely. The last time a pharaoh died, someone had to carve 1,000 new scarabs overnight. Your uncle still twitches at the sight of green stone. But more than logistics, there's a strange pause. Even you feel it, like a breath held between ages. The God King is gone. The sun still rises, the Nile still floods, but something feels shifted, off kilter. The divine thread has snapped, if only briefly. You help the scribe prepare a local record. Name of the deceased king, dates of reign, titles, achievements, divine lineage. You carefully write it in bold, practice strokes. The ink feels heavier than usual. Later, the priest hosts a small ritual at the village shrine. There's incense, a chant, some flower petals. One old woman claims to see the king's spirit drift past, wrapped in golden linen. You believe her. Why not? Then the news spreads faster. There'll be a new pharaoh, a young one, barely old enough to shave. You wonder what kind of god king a teenager makes. Probably moody, possibly terrifying, hopefully not another pyramid enthusiast. Your family holds a quiet dinner. Your father says, "May the new one be less interested in stones." Your mother lights a candle anyway. She says, "Power needs prayer." That night, the village is unusually quiet. Even the wind seems careful. You lie on your mat, Bess' amulet still tied to your wrist, and stare at the ceiling. You think of everything you've seen. Floods and fires, crocodiles and scribes, bread made from mud and dreams made from barley. You've walked in Pharaoh's wars and ducked under temple chants. You've stolen time from death and carved your name into the living mud. And now, one age ends, another begins, and you're still here. Tomorrow, you'll rise before dawn, as always. You'll copy tax records. You'll chase birds from fields. You'll try not to step on snakes. Because history doesn't pause for the little people. But the little people are the ones who live it. You smile in the dark. Sleep at last comes easy. The stars hang low tonight, gentle and unblinking. You lie beneath them, breathing slow, the heat of the day slipping from your skin. The Nile whispers beyond the fields, its rhythm steady, eternal. A thin breeze rustles the reeds, carrying the soft scent of clay, old grain, and faint incense. All around you, the village sleeps. Chickens nestled, fires burned low. Little clay oil lamps flickering behind mudbrick walls. Even a gossip has gone to bed. Your muscles soften. Your thoughts begin to loosen, like threads unwinding from a worn linen robe. The weight of the day fades, slowly, tenderly. Your fingers stop twitching. Your jaw unclenches. You feel the curve of the earth under your mat and the faint hum of life above it. You picture your name, still etched in ink, resting quietly on a scroll tucked away in a scribe's chest. A name remembered. A life lived, not grand, not gilded, but real. Full of noise, mud, laughter, and love. A cat purrs somewhere nearby. Maybe a blessing from Badet. Maybe just a warm corner. Your breath grows longer, softer. The ceiling fades. The stars blur. The Nile keeps flowing. And you let go.